Normally, when you think of Ireland, you envision the calm countryside with greenery as far as the eyes can see, surrounded by a beautiful ocean. But what probably doesn't come to mind are ice sheets, 10,000 feet high, with the only plant life spanning a narrow corridor 100 miles across, where the largest deer of all time gracefully wandered the forests of a land that wasn't even an island at the time. The time I'm referring to for this now island, often described as being magical for its rich history during the Age of Humans, is the period known as the Pleistocene. Hi everyone, it's your friend Rick, back again with another episode of Archaic Worlds. Today we're taking a look at the perplexing question, what kind of environment was capable of sustaining the largest deer ever known to walk the earth? The Irish elk, as well as our typical imaginative speculation as to how one of these creatures went about their daily life. With antlers spanning 13 feet from tip to tip, the Irish elk reached their greatest numbers during the Devonian glaciation throughout today's Ireland and northern Britain, and while they're commonly referred to as the Irish elk, their range spanned most of Greater Eurasia. The name comes from the location of its first discovery, though remains have been found across the continent near Lake Baikal. Irish physician Thomas Molyneux was the first to draft scientific descriptions for this beast in the year 1695, though it's been said that skulls and antlers had been commonly unearthed by the local Irish long before Molyneux ever picked up his shovel. Then, in his 1799 journal, titled Handbuch der Naturgeschichte, or the Handbook of Natural Sciences, German naturalist Johann Friedrich Blumenbach first named this creature Alce gigantea. The original name incorrectly classified the deer as an elk, with the Latin word being alcis, a mistake still echoing today in its common name. Today, they're commonly known as the megaloceros, or in Greek, great horn. In fact, the Irish elk is its own type of giant deer, with its earliest known specimen having lived 400,000 years ago, and its most recent having lived 7,700 years ago, meaning they survived well into the early Holocene, which is our current epoch. They were on average between 7 feet tall and weighed between 1,300 and 1,500 pounds. An interesting finding, which we so rarely learn from prehistoric animals, is the color of the animal's fur based on existing cave paintings, and it would appear that a distinct dark stripe ran diagonally down the Irish elk's side from shoulder to mid-thigh. If we are to take these cave paintings as literal accounts of events that actually transpired, then these markings stand out entirely unique from existing deer species. Focusing on these markings, the most pronounced drawings featuring this stripe can be found near the southern French department of Gourdon in the famous Cognac caves. These portals to a time long gone by were discovered, in a modern sense of the word, in 1949 and 1952. Beautiful ancient drawings of animals are sprawled across these two long caves, including the red ibex, the woolly mammoth, and of course, the Irish elk. As caves tend to stand the test of time, it seems, through years of excavation, that two different species of early humans called the cave a temporary home at various points in the past, with Neanderthal remains dating back to around 50,000 years ago found in one section of the cave, and Cro-Magnon remains dating 25,000 and 15,000 years old, respectively, found in two other sections. It was a team led by archaeologist and paleontologist Helene Valladas in 1992 that ran radiocarbon dating tests on these remains, as well as the paintings themselves. In total, there were 3 paintings of human figures, 60 paintings of animals, and 50 outlines of human hands, each dating to various time periods. Interestingly as well, it would appear through Valladas's findings that the radiocarbon dating yielded the results of 2 different time periods for one specific painting of a female Irish elk. This would infer that although the original painting was drawn in red ochre found in the local French countryside 25,000 years ago, a second artist added touch-ups to the deer 19,500 years ago. Perhaps this painting of an Irish elk was simply so breathtaking that the second artist wanted to make sure it remained unharmed by the constant weathering of time, further solidifying what we've known for a long while, which is that early humans were far more intellectual and complex than we once gave them credit for. And to give them even more credit, it would seem that a notable descriptive feature that can also be attributed to the Irish elk using these paintings is a large hump resting on the creature's shoulders, which would make a lot of sense considering the antlers on a megaloceros are estimated to have weighed between 88 and 99 pounds. Our shoulders would probably be pretty jacked too if we had to carry 90-pound weights on our heads. While it's not known for sure why thousands of sites across Europe and the rest of the world feature the use of red ochre in their paintings, it's theorized that this pigment is not simply chosen for its natural abundance, but likely because it is the color of blood, of life itself, which is shared by mammals, birds, reptiles, and more, often a symbol of fertility and strength. Therefore, it may also be that in choosing this pigment to depict such cunning and strong deer, they're honoring and respecting the animal for granting the humans the ability to carry on living. For it's clear that depicting the animals as they were in life, upright and defiant, that the early humans are attempting to capture them at their best. The animals are not dying or being consumed, but standing or running as the artist saw them firsthand, trotting across the snowy plains and dense forests. Focusing more on the creature's antlers, the purpose of these impressive bony structures covered in velvet are debated, but it's likely that they were used as mating displays, with the biggest and grandest antlers being the most coveted and sought after by females during mating season. As it is with the deer of modern day, the size of one's antlers likely advertised how healthy and virile a male deer was, displaying that virility directly to the females so they can choose the best genes to be passed on to their offspring. Although it's these massive 13-foot spanning antlers that also could have been the megaloceros' downfall. As paleontologists believe, the weight and size of the deer's antlers eventually became too great for the animal to survive in forests that, at the time, were growing more lush and vibrant with trees as the ice sheets began to melt. The inability to traverse dense forests and at the same time evade the growing threat of humans may have proven too difficult for the Irish elk to maintain its population as time went on, resulting in overhunting of the species as well as its eventual demise. That changing environment, as well as the increasing numbers of human predators in mind, we can turn our attention to what life was like for an Irish elk, while specifically taking a look at its namesake country of Ireland while it was alive and thriving. 15,000 years ago, a rapid global warming took place, leading to huge swarms of early humans venturing into northern Europe, and by 6000 BCE, they began entering Ireland in droves. Surprisingly at that time, the true Irish elks of Ireland were long gone from this frozen land, as the oldest remains in Ireland date back 10,500 years. Yet, there was still a long period beforehand where these animals grazed on grasses, leaves, shrubs, and fruits that the then peninsula had to offer. And to make Ireland seem even stranger, if we go back a few more thousand years, spotted hyena once roamed these lands. A 100-mile land bridge between Ireland and Britain gave countless species the ability to come and go, allowing migrants to eat, reproduce, and evolve uninhibited by the sea that would one day make this an impossibility. With an average temperature of 46 degrees Fahrenheit, the warmest Ireland would have gotten during the last glacial maximum would have been the same temperature it gets during the winter today, meaning a thick coat of fur would be needed to fend off harsh Ice Age winters, that would often plummet the temperature well below freezing. Now that we've shed light on the environment and history of the Megaloceros, it's at this point in a video of ours where we fill in the gaps, so to speak, with a descriptive story passage to immerse you further into these worlds once thought lost to time using the facts we have available to us. Allow us, then, to take you back in time to a place where what little growth of food that could be found was never taken for granted. Picture a dense pine forest undergoing a slow melting of snow in a land where it hardly melts throughout the year at all. In this thawing land, jutting out from modern-day Britain and the rest of Europe, we can hear the light crunching atop the ground's white blanket as a male Irish elk wanders through the forest, looking for the only thing that might make the cold feel warmer. He is searching far and wide for a mate. Taking slow steps, the deer listens intently for any shifting branches or rustling pine needles until finally, faintly, on the cool breeze, he smells the lingering scent of a female. The day marches on as the proud male's graceful antlers brush against the pointy green pins that splay out from the trees, and his snout jets warm clouds of breath with each sniff of the heavenly scent. He gets closer and closer until the scent is overwhelming. Then she reveals herself from behind the tall pines. The eyes of the doe blink in fear at first, but they soon soften when she identifies her 7-foot-tall suitor, his striking black stripes draping across his shoulders. Wasting no time, the buck bows his head to display the impressive array, a glorious crown for the would-be king. As he bends lower, he patiently awaits the female's approach until her elegant tan coat of fur is merely a blur as she darts back into the thick woods. It seems this one was unimpressed, but the male must know for certain, so he gallops after her. The pines, being as thick as they are, become cumbersome to traverse, given the size of the male's antlers, causing him to lose sight of his prize. All hope seems lost, and the sun drops lower in the sky. The shade gets darker and darker when our male Megaloceros finds himself in a clearing. Within this clearing, he spots another male, with antlers like the wings of a great bird, much larger than his own, kneeling low before the female he had sought all afternoon. This male's stripes were darker, the hump on his back much larger than the male in focus, but our male is undoubtedly taller. His height seems to have no effect on the female, unfortunately, as she approaches the competing male with the darker stripe, clearly enamored with his massive, elaborate antlers. Seeing the female so worked up for the competition, our taller male knows he must step in or bow out, so he trots up to the rival male, ready to fight for the female. Rearing up on its hind legs, the lighter striped deer knocks into its opponent with its antlers, pushing the target into the snowy ground. The target does not give up that easily, though, for it quickly regains its footing to hurl its own antlers into the aggressor with one heavy swinging motion. The two end up locking their antlers together in a battle of strength, with the initial blow causing our hero to lose his footing. Finding it quickly, however, he plants his hooves into the powdered ground, pressing hard into the competition to overpower him and gain the advantage. It seems to the darker striped competitor that the strength of his attacker is too great for him to handle. So, in a desperate gamble, he rears onto his hind legs to box with his front hooves. Unfortunately for him, the taller deer's boxing routine proves to be more effective. The deer we've been following this whole time reigns victorious after a hard hoof knock to his enemy's head. Afterward, that enemy retreats to the other side of the clearing and into the forest to look for a new potential mate before the sun finally sets. Reaping his reward, our male heads over to the female, who is watching on and accomplishes what he set out to do, securing his bloodline and passing on his genes. Once the deed is done, he ventures off into the heart of the pines to prepare for another day with a snack of tall grasses. It isn't until about 270 days later that a new deer is born by the mother, while the father is separated from the females to live among the other young males during the winter months. And though whether or not the newborn sees his father again remains uncertain, be it by chance or if he breeds with the same mother the following mating season, what is for certain is that he inherits his father's strength, granting him excellent survival odds for the years to come. We hope you enjoyed this descriptive passage, but before we end this video, we'd like to focus more on that bit toward the end, where the male deer lives separately from the females, especially because this was not some wild guess, but an educated one, backed by paleontological evidence. It was the year 1913, when an Indian-born surgeon by the name of Henry Stokes conducted 3 days of research on the remains of a few Irish elk found in the bogs of Ballybataw, near the town of Kilternan, just outside of Dublin. In his scientific article published in the May 1914 issue of the Irish Naturalist's Journal, he describes only a few bone fragments of these specimens, but it was his early research that laid the groundwork for the unearthing of over 100 individuals within the same bog, who all turned out to be young bucks. This sparked various questions from many paleontologists, including, why would such a large number of megaloceros die in the same location? And why were they all male? And to answer both questions, we need not look any further than the deer of today. This is because it is a common practice for numerous modern deer species to separate from their counterpart sexes after an autumn rut season, as they have different nutritional requirements for performing different biological processes. Females need to eat certain plants for the gestation of the young in their wombs, and males need to fight for dominance over other males, and as a result, the males typically eat less and become lean from all the fighting during the rut. This results in a phenomenon known as winter kill, when the young bucks malnourished from the autumn rut starve during the harsh winters during which nothing grows. In the September 2008 issue of Oikos Scientific Journal, zoologist Cedric O'Driscoll Warman and biologist Tristan Kimbrell affirmed that it was the massive size of an Irish elk's antlers that caused its extinction. Comparing the body mass of this ancient giant deer with the red deer of today, who also experience large-scale winter kills, they estimated that a hypothetical average-sized megaloceros with antlers weighing 77 pounds might have had those antlers reduced to 55 pounds or even 40 pounds in poorer conditions. And despite a reduction in antler size, the amount of nourishment required to keep a 40 or 55 pound set of antlers through the winter months on top of your head would likely have been substantial. In other words, these antlers were so big to maintain even for an animal so huge that the antler growth often starved Irish elk to death, especially considering the antler growth in deer even causes a condition similar to osteoporosis. One final nugget of knowledge we leave you with is that the gestation period of this animal described in the story passage was also not just a guess. Using the same method of comparing the weight of a megaloceros with modern deer, we can conclude that the time from conception to birth would have been about 270 days, as gestation typically correlates quite accurately with weight. And that's all we have for you today. Thank you so much for watching this episode on the Irish elk. Please make sure to like and subscribe to the channel so you never miss a single thing as we grow the space for educational content. With that, I'm your friend Rick, and this has been Archaic Worlds.